Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. I'm Lee Camp, joined by the always amazing Eleanor Goldfield. And let's make sure all the things are going. Welcome. Lot happening. Lot happening in this world of fascism in which we live. Fascism can be fun. Okay, so if you're thinking of going full fash, folks, fascism can be fun, as Donald Trump is proving. And the question I put up on YouTube is Trump going? Is Trump ramping up fascism, or is he kind of keeping the steady state of fascism we were in before he got into office? That's my question to you. But anyway, we're going to get into some of his court battles that are ongoing. We're also going to get into some new information on Israel and genocide, and the fact that there is a former member of the Israeli Defense Ministry now in the Oval Office, now in the White House. So that's exciting. And Eleanor, you have someone who would like to vote for you in 2028 as president. So
how do you know it's president? It could be
Goldfield for dog catcher,
hall monitor.
Okay.
I don't know.
Goldfield for hall monitor.
I will be making those signs, by the way. Yes, that's wonderful. I would prefer guillotine 2028.
Guillotine 2020.
I'll work the guillotine.
It's way too late for that. Can we do 2025?
I agree, but I'm saying like I will work. I will sign up to work the guillotine in 2028.
You'll take your guillotine shift.
Yep.
Okay, so this has just been reported a few hours ago, and in certain ways, it seems like definitely a ramping up of fascism because it is the attack on the judiciary. And we'll get into some of the deeper levels of this in a second, but let's just talk about the surface level news story here that a Wisconsin judge was arrested by the FBI, accused of shielding immigrants from federal agents. FBI agents arrested a county judge in Milwaukee today on charges of obstructing immigration agents by steering an immigrant through a side door in her courtroom while the agents waited in a public hallway. Basically, she tried to get him out from a door where he would not walk into the agents that were there to arrest him. So basically, she's doing what you should do in a fascist state, is try and protect those from the fascism. And for that, she was arrested and released on her own recognizance today, but she still has charges against her.
Does that mean that she can still be a sitting judge or no?
I don't think so, because whatever the judge above her, for the state or whatever, said that her caseload would be taken over by someone else. So I guess
it's funny that you can't adjudicate.
Well done.
Thank you. When you have charges levied against you, but you can be president. That's kind of cool.
Oh my God. The shit you can do and be president is amazing.
I know. It's pretty remarkable.
The arrest of a sitting state court judge is a major escalation in Trump administration's battle with local authorities over deportations. The administration has demanded, under threat of investigation or prosecution, that local officials not impede federal efforts to deport millions of undocumented immigrants. Charging documents describe the confrontation last Friday, where she escorted the man out of the side door. She was charged with obstructing a proceeding of a federal agency, and has, like I said, she's appeared in court today and has been released on her own recognizance for now. So I don't want to act like it's that much difference, but there is a little difference between what happens to her and if Trump were arresting judges for their decisions. It's not that this isn't pretty fucked up, but it's that would be in certain ways worse, and it would be a further step towards fascism to be arresting judges for decisions they make against him. I don't know if you want to say anything before I reveal the coincidence that has happened.
No, do your big reveal.
I don't think that coincidences really generally exist. And it just so happens that one of the main news stories on a lot of media today is, let's see, where is it? Is that many Trump initiatives are being knocked down by judges. His agenda is being stopped, halted by judges. And one of the major news stories is in Wall Street Journal, which of course Trump reads, a right-wing newspaper, but it's also on MSN and Yahoo News, etc. Trump initiative knocked back in new round of court rulings. And it then goes on to describe all of the rulings. President Trump suffered a string of defeats in federal courts on Thursday as judges ruled to curtail measures targeting immigration enforcement, voting, and diversity initiatives in education. The decisions are the latest setbacks for the administration, which has been frustrated by judges moving to block or slow the wide-ranging actions on core policy goals. One of these cases had to do with a sweeping executive order on proof of citizenship in order to vote, although something that has not been talked about enough is it's only in the federal mail voter registration system, which very few relatively use. Most people register to vote in their state, which is a different thing. However, if he had gotten away with it, it would have been a big signal to the states, hey, you can do this too. So anyway, that's been shot down, and several other initiatives, mainly having to do with immigration, have been shot down by federal judges. So is it a coincidence that on the day where, he's seeing a lot of judges push back on his items, on his agenda, and it's getting mainstream coverage in many outlets, they happen to decide to press charges against this judge that they this all went down a week ago. So they, I guess, arrested her today for something that happened a week ago.
Kind of also reminds me of, Trump saying things like the media is the enemy, or was that Vance? I don't know. Either way, both.
I mean, they both said it, yeah.
Right. And then going after various media outlets, even ones that, and here's the thing, like, there's nuance here. I don't like Voice of America. They are a heap. What did you call Fox News? A parade of propaganda?
And a festival of ignorance.
Yes. That's what Voice of America is. And also, we should not be cheering on the censorship of any media because it's a slippery slope. Just like when Alex Jones was canceled and pulled off of all of the platforms, it's like, if Alex Jones never said another word, I'd be so happy. That's not the point. The point is that if they can come for the person you disagree with, they can come for you. And so this idea of free speech is only for people I agree with, that's not actually free speech. So if we actually want people to be able to adjudicate, I'm going to keep using that word because it's a good, I'm really proud of
found a word you like.
If we want people to be allowed to adjudicate according to the Constitution and such, if we want people to be able to access free press vis-a-vis the First Amendment, then it means that we have to allow people to do these things in ways that we don't agree with. That does not mean that they are allowed to do it in ways that actually threaten human rights, that actually go after people for their identity, as opposed to, it's like the difference between Blue Lives Matter and Black Lives Matter. You can take off the police uniform, okay? And it'd be really better for everyone if you did. You can't stop being a Black person. You can't stop being an immigrant, right? You can't, this is basically if they are going after somebody for who they inherently are, that's not okay. If you are going after someone based on their conduct in a certain job or things like that, right? So we're making this distinction, but we're also making that clear that just because you disagree with something doesn't mean that it's okay to go after it. So a lot of people were cheering about the Voice of America. A lot of people are cheering out, and it's like, yeah. And
can I say one thing? There's a slight difference in decreasing the funding of a government-funded propaganda outlet is different than censoring, than saying
Absolutely. And also, I think that there's a big issue with public funding for public or funding for public media via the government. So basically public funding. And we spend $1, whereas other nations like in England, for instance, spend $100
BBC, yeah.
A year per person on public media. And of course, that means that public media is going to be saying shit that you disagree with.
And they get Doctor Who and Downton Abbey and shit. Wait, is Downton Abbey BBC? I don't know.
I don't know. That's really that's above my pay grade. Anyway, that was a bit of a tangent, but that's why I'm here, isn't it? For random tangents that y'all didn't necessarily want to go on.
I don't think that's true at all. You are here for random tangents that we all want to go on.
I don't know if that's true. But anyway, yes.
But yes, to get to a little bit of deeper level.
Sorry, there was a fly.
You just look like a crazy person.
There was legitimately a fly. I'm not.
Anyway,
not crazy.
To get to a little bit deeper level of this is not to say that all judges are wonderful. It is not to say that, I don't know anything about this judge beyond this one moment. There are many judges across this country that their entire goal in life is to lock up as many black and brown people as possible, is to go after immigrants. So let's not give in to the kind of liberal media idea that, well, judge equals good. Some judges are not bad. Some judges are pretty bad. And some judges are downright evil. There's also the fact that our entire legal system is set up almost exclusively by the rich and powerful. Like, that is who they choose to go after. There are laws being broken endlessly around the entire country in terms of, tax dodging, in terms of the pharmaceuticals that are killing people, like opioid epidemic, in terms of the pollution that big oil's doing. None of that sees, teams of cops just raiding them all the time, trying to make sure that shit doesn't go down. We're going to put a cop on the corner of every corporate office to make sure that they behave. All of that is largely ignored so that, but meanwhile, the cops are on every corner, entrenching and securing the status quo, securing the property of the rich, securing a racist and sexist and classist system. And so let's remember all of that while the media says, oh, because this one judge was arrested, let's idealize judges and act like all law is noble and just.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think there's a two-man horn here, but there's a really great interview with Ben Price, who's the co-creator of the Community Mental Legal Defense Fund. And he recently wrote a book that talks about like how we don't have the rights that we think we have, right? And how this country was set up by federalists so that white land-owning dudes and property-owning, also human-owning white men would have the rights and everybody else can go F themselves. So that's really the structure of our justice system in the United States. So it's important to recognize that that's how that works. Again, I don't know what this judge has done in the past. She might have a 50-50 record. She might have a shit record. I don't know. And it doesn't matter. This is, the specific story that we're covering. But of course, important to recognize that the justice system as it stands is remarkably unjust.
Yes, not just pure and just. Oh, and by the way, the head of the FBI and resident psychopath Kash Patel was bragging on Twitter about this arrest of this judge, about how luckily we got this, evil villain, this judge who tried to very slightly help an undocumented immigrant.
I know. When I saw the headline, I honestly was like, oh man, like, was she hiding him in her basement or something?
Yeah.
And it's like, no, she told him to use his different door. And I'm like,
was she,
a different door?
Was she,
that's it?
Was she, Anne Frankenham or something?
Yeah, no, like, what do they call that? A pope's,
does a pope shit in the woods?
Priest's hole, which sounds dirty.
It's called a priest hole.
Yeah, when they used to have to hide, like their, in England, they'd have to hide their Catholic priests.
They need to find a new name.
Look, there's also a dessert in England called spotted dick. So they have a lot of work to do on naming things in general.
It's Robin in the chat, and hey, Robin, how you doing? Asked if they can promote the book Propaganda.
Oh, I want to read that.
I also just heard an interview with the author, and it sounds awesome. It sounds like it says a lot of the things that I've been yelling about for a while now, but of course, I think he's an academic who actually goes and gets data and things, and I just yell about them. So, but yeah, it sounds excellent.
Both are valuable.
It sounds excellent. Okay, so let's. A lot of Trump initiatives getting shot down. And on that thread, I just wanted to talk about what seems to be the collapse of his tariff war. I don't think it's over, but this is from Ben Norton. The Trump administration is admitting defeat in its aggressive trade war against China, throwing in the towel after only 3 weeks. Billionaire Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who is, big time Team Trump. He is not anti-Trump, says the trade war is unsustainable and the U.S. needs a de-escalation on the trade war.
In a lot of ways.
The U.S. And Ben Norton adds, the U.S. economy will collapse without China. So, and now Trump has backed the tariffs on China back to like 10%, claiming they will go higher. But that's a far cry from what he was saying, 200 and something percent on many products. It just seems like they completely miscalculated as to what the results of this would be, how it would be, how the world would respond to it. The dollar, and even though much of the stock market has come back because it's a Ponzi scheme, but even though much of it has come back, the belief in the dollar has decreased. The dollar has lost 10% of its value, whether Trump changes his mind or not, because people are realizing this is an unstable system. And so that's the core of all of this, is the strength of the petrodollar, and the U.S. dollar is the global reserve currency. And Trump thought he was helping that by creating this massive trade war. And instead,
he doesn't understand it.
Because he doesn't understand things. And instead, he has shot the dollar in the foot. Does that work?
Shot Uncle Sam in the foot.
Thank you, Joseph, for supporting the show. Really appreciate it. I do not frown upon super chats. A protester hit Ben-Gvir in the head with a bottle. I did not know that.
Well, you know that Ben-Gvir was in New York yesterday.
I was aware he was in the U.S., but
yeah. Also, Teresa, if you scroll up,
we do have good aim here in the United States with our bottles and shoes and things.
The shoe guy wasn't in the U.S.
I know.
Okay.
I think someone threw a shoe at Hillary Clinton too, though.
Oh, really?
Yeah, well, it was a while back.
That's great.
Yeah.
It's a tactic that I like it.
Keeps on giving. What am I looking at?
Can you just chill with your scroll? Christ on a cracker. Okay. Teresa says, was listening to Eleanor and Ron McClune's show telling the history of rednecks. Yay! Thank you. I'm so glad you listened. Being on Ron's show was a lot of fun. And if you're curious about the history of rednecks, you can listen to that show. You can also check out my film, Hard Road of Hope, at hardroadofhope.com, because the term redneck is not what we've been told. Cliffhanger. Cliffhanger.
We'll leave it at that. Yeah, if you haven't checked out Hard Road of Hope, you should. Let's see here. So back to FBI raids and our path down the full Fash path. Say that 10 times real fast.
We're at 666 viewers. Okay.
Nobody joined. No,
that's good.
8 people hang up. No,
I like that more people are joining, but then that I caught it. And that makes me happy. It makes the baby metalhead in me very happy.
Any 666.
Thanks for being there with me for that. Okay.
The FBI is from Mondo Weiss. Excellent outlet. The FBI and police raid homes of Palestine activists in Michigan. And this is even harsher than, there they are laughing about it. This is even harsher than what was, at least this moment, was harsher than the arrest of like the activists in New York, because this is like FBI and shit. This isn't even ICE. Like,
and also, as far as I don't know for sure, but these were not visa holders. Weren't these were like American citizens? Again, not that should matter at all, because this is still like a totally unacceptable fascistic use of force. And also, I think the details are important. But I do think that these 4 individuals were detained, but eventually released. I don't see anything about whether these students were actually visa holders or citizens. But again, like, they were detained. Their houses were probably totally fakaked. If you watch this video, it's horrifying. Like, to think of being on the receiving end of them literally battering ram down your door, just for taking.
I'm gonna try and mute it, but because Instagram blows chunks, I don't even see a mute button.
There is a mute.
Where?
I don't know where.
Instagram.
I don't know on the embed thing, but there is somewhere.
Somewhere.
Oh my God.
This is excellent.
See, there you go.
Oh, and there just plays instantly muted. So if I didn't want it to be muted, I'd just be fucked in that scenario. Oh, Instagram should be dragged out of its house and hanged. All right, let me see if I can find the one that plays while muted. Is that it?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so now we have a 4-inch by 4-inch square on your screen.
Oh my God.
That is actually showing the video. You know
Also,
I'm
do
right.
you think the FBI pays for the damage caused?
Oh yeah, they fixed that door immediately.
They bring in their own carpenters. There are FBI carpenters that
Yep.
come in.
Yep, it's fixed before you even know it. It's literally the guy right behind this guy.
Yeah,
fixes it.
that's his job. Can
Yep.
you click back to the video, please? I
I
just
don't
want to
even
see.
know where it is.
Oh my God.
This?
Yeah. So, hold on.
Well, I had an article about it.
Okay. No, I just wanted to see something. Okay.
Well, where was the article?
I like how the guy walks in, by the way, like looking like he's trying to keep the person from getting riled up. It's like, you're the motherfucker that just knocked down my door. Like, if anybody
I
should
know.
calm the F down, it's you, you
But-
absolute psycho.
The raids reportedly targeted a number of student organizers who were connected to Gaza protests at the University of Michigan. According to the group, Students Allied for Freedom and Equality, agents seized the students' electronics, number of personal items. 4 individuals were detained and eventually released. So, considering they were not held indefinitely, it sounds like they don't necessarily have a bunch on them. They're probably hoping to find more on their computers as they try and go through them.
Or this was the whole point.
Or
the whole
well, that's
point.
what I was going to say. Try and find more, and as they do that, the punishment is the process. They've destroyed their house. They've scared the living shit out of them. They've scared the living shit out of protesters across this country.
Right.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
For what? For standing up against fucking genocide.
Do you want to say thank you or?
Thank you, Teresa. Sorry, I was busy being angry. Thank you so much, Teresa, for gifting 5 memberships on YouTube. And really awesome of you. Thanks for the show.
Yeah, so this is also an example of, I keep tooting my own horn here about the Project Censored show. Another interview that I did on Project Censored was with a Yale student, Thea Chattel, who through a FOIA request had received evidence of extreme, like an incredible depth and breadth of collusion between Yale Police Department and federal law enforcement, Zionist organizations, big surprise. They were basically working together to surveil and harass students at Yale. And I think at the core, like the levels of questions here that Lee's really good at, why the hell do universities have their own police force? That's absolutely batshit, okay?
Ooh,
Universities should not have police departments. You know what they should have? They should have like a community garden staff. Like, they should not have anything that has the power to oppressively arrest people. That should not be a thing. Because here's the thing, if somebody does get murdered or raped on campus, that should be a matter for people who are experts, not people who are like mall cops that started working at a university. So that's the first thing.
And let me just add in there, when people quote the number of cops across America and say like, oh, that's not that many or whatever, they exclude all of those cops, all those college cops, all those lower school cops, like anything that's not a legitimate state police officer, they pretend those don't exist.
So there is a remarkable amount of collusion between these agencies. So
thank you, TF, for supporting the show.
So when we see this raid in Michigan, the Michigan FBI and the local police and the university police are all working together. So it is a remarkable, Orwellian, like, doesn't even fucking cut it anymore. It's a horrific panopticon of surveillance and oppressive tactics that really want to ensure that this kind of campus activism doesn't happen again. And we saw this after and during the Vietnam War, right? Like vis-a-vis the Powell memo, for instance.
Thank you, Denise.
The powers that be were really, really scared and uncomfortable with the amount of activism that was being generated from college campuses. One, because this represented a kind of coordinated attack on the state between the universities, but also universities are where you're supposed to get your next round of warmongers and war profiteers and war criminals, right? So what happens?
And just the managerial class. It's where you're supposed to get the mid-level rulers of the society.
So what happens if they start saying, actually, I call bullshit on this whole system? That's really uncomfortable. So you saw this during the Vietnam War, during the civil rights movement, basically them trying to ensure that this would not be, that college campuses would no longer be able to create these kind of movements. And it worked relatively well. We saw some encampments popping up during Occupy, for instance, in 2011, 2012, but nothing compared to the Gaza encampments last year, where like around the globe, some like 300 plus encampments for Gaza popped up. This really frightens the powers that be. And so they want to make sure that this doesn't happen again. And so what do? Well, you have to ensure that the students are so scared shitless, not just for the sake of their careers vis-a-vis like getting expelled, but also for their physical safety, right? And so you do this kind of shit. You use the tools that you have, which is this extreme collusion between these federal and state and university law enforcement forces. And yeah, you get to the point where students are so terrified, understandably so, that the reality of encampments like we saw last year happening again is greatly diminished.
And yeah, that's all great points. And you saw a similar tactics, although not identical, during Occupy. It was, we need, first of all, to define these people as not what they are. So they tried to define, us occupiers as dirty, as not knowing what they were talking about, as exclusively homeless, et cetera, et cetera. So define them as something bad, which they did do with the Palestine encampments as well, right? These are terrorist sympathizers, they're Hamas supporters, et cetera. But then the other thing is to show a lot of aggressive police tactics so that students or people at Occupy are afraid to go down there. The problem with Occupy, especially in those first few weeks when it really started to grow, was that your average people were coming down. Middle-class people were coming down and saying this is wrong and we need to stand for something, et cetera. But if you start showing on the nightly news every day, police tackling, beating, arresting people, all of a sudden your average Americans who are not generally activists, who are not generally showing up at things that are not their fucking kid's soccer game, they're like, I'm not going down there. It looks dangerous, And so it's both those things. And so now we're seeing a lot of the second part of that with the Palestine, with the Palestine solidarity, anti-genocide protests is, let's make everyone think that if you go down to these encampments, you will be arrested by the FBI.
And also on that note, this is airing this coming Monday. I did an interview with Kay Pritzker, who's the co-director of the film, The Encampments. And I saw the film. It's amazing. And folks should definitely check it out. And you can go to Watermelon Pictures and request a screening wherever you are. But one of the things that we talked about was really how like these encampments created community. And I was talking again about Occupy because I think why this tactic is so scary is not just because it forces the hand because you are holding space, but also because it is a threat of a good example. You are literally acting in ways that you would like to see the system act. You are inviting people in, you're feeding them. There are medics on there that are willing to help people with ailments, obviously not like cancer and shit, but like, you have an example, a microcosm of what we are capable of as human beings, as collaborative beings.
You start yelling free chemo, people show up.
So you have this threat of a good example that's also highlighting the bullshittery and the hypocrisy of the system just by existing as a community space where kids are welcome, where everybody is welcome regardless of their age, their background, even their political affiliations, because that's the thing. You have people walking, I did it at Occupy LA, you had people walking up being like, look, I work at a bank that's just here downtown, like, I don't really understand what's going on. And you'd be like, okay, look, cool, let's sit down and talk about it. Like this was so dangerous because you had people just walking into these spaces being like, I want to hear more. And talking to Kay, because I was not at the encampments last year, that was the same thing. You had people just being like a welcoming party, being like, hey, welcome. Like, what do you want to know about Palestine? Here's some like the 101 of occupation, It's like, that is so dangerous.
Yeah.
So I think it's also really important to recognize the layered dangers of these encampments for the establishment, and why also such a powerful tactic.
Yeah, it is. It's all been very powerful. Here's another related story by Drop Site. By weaponizing arrest records and suspending due process, the Trump administration has targeted over 1,000 foreign students facing sweeping deportation threats. International students and recent graduates who have had their visas revoked or status terminated speak out about living in fear and confusion. And by the way, if you know or are one of these students at a university where you've been told to basically self-deport, there are articles saying that ICE doesn't actually have the ability to tell you to self-deport. So your university may say that, but it's actually not. You don't have to actually do it. Now, that's not saying that ICE doesn't have the ability to come arrest certain people, but they sent out these mass, notices at universities saying self-deport, but there's actually no legality behind that.
And in this article, the site shares some, has interviewed some people who work with organizations who can probably reach out for support. But basically what this article is showing is that they're going after people who've been out. Are we glitching?
We are glitching, but I don't know what else to do about it. We're on Ethernet.
So where was I? Oh yeah. So they're going after people who are speaking out about Gaza and against Israel and against Zionism. They're also just going after people by like basically dredging through arrest records. And here's the thing. If you've ever been arrested, it does not equal conviction. It doesn't even equal doing anything like bad. Okay. So for instance, they interview one person who back in 2013, she had a verbal argument with a friend, which this is one of those instances where it's like, don't call the cops if you hear two people arguing. Okay. Just like, don't. That could ruin somebody's life. Exhibit A.
Yeah. I know. Don't call the cops unless you're prepared for someone to be shot.
Yeah.
Like if you're thinking like someone needs to be shot, then okay, I guess you're in a pretty shitty situation. But outside of that, because there's a chance someone's going to get shot.
Yeah. So she was released soon after her arrest. And she says there was never any conviction. And all of a sudden, now she is getting her visa revoked because basically what they've done is they've gone through a huge database and just looked at who has any arrest records. And these people are being targeted for deportation. And so this is like, yes, we're talking specifically about Gaza, but it's also much broader. This person had not been part of the protests. They're just a student who back in 2013 got arrested because she was arguing with a friend. Like, so ridiculous. Compare that to the crimes that our entire system.
If you're going to argue, you have no right to be in America. Okay. There are no arguments here. I don't know if you've been online and you looked in some of the chats, but zero arguments going on in America. Agree or get out.
And like Lee pointed out, this is causing a lot of people to self-deport, even though they don't actually legally have to. And it's all about intimidation. And of course, this is all. It's not just about it'd be bad enough if it was just one student who's here on their own studying, but this is literally breaking up families. Like one person in this article talks about being potentially separated from his young child. I mean, this is really, really horrific. And of course, the goal is not just to get people out who are immigrants. It is a slippery slope, right? And as
to stop people from protesting and fighting back.
Well, not only that, but as I interviewed Afeni Evans, who's a rad organizer down in DC, and she was talking about how, if you're just a regular Black person minding your own business, they are coming for you. Like this is that classic poem that first they came for the da 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 da, and I didn't speak up because I wasn't a da 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 da, and then on and on down the line, and pretty soon you are the da 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 that they're coming for, So I think that it's really important to recognize this slippery slope, as if it wasn't enough to care just because they're other human beings. And to Robin Ryan's point, Mahmoud Khalil became a dad while wrongfully locked up. I find this really
also this is a key point. Big slap to Trump's face here that they've been forced to admit that they had no warrant to arrest Mahmoud Khalil or several of the other activists.
Yeah, this is another one of those aspects with the know your rights. Now, if you look at the video, it's very clear that Mahmoud Khalil and his wife were trying to get them to like show evidence that they had the right to be there. But he was kidnapped anyway, which is why it's a kidnapping. Okay. But
kidnapping legal if you have a badge.
Exactly.
You can kidnap the shit out of people.
But to Robin's point about him becoming a dad, I find this to be a really interesting in a really morbid way. If you look at one of the main drivers or one of the main propaganda points for the war on terror to begin back in the early 2000s, it was to protect Muslim women in the Middle East because they were so oppressed, right? They were so oppressed. Oh my God, look at them in their headscarves.
That was some of the most laughable propaganda bullshit
But
ever.
It was one of the main driving points.
We care about the women. We can't leave when Biden finally pulled the troops out of Afghanistan. We can't leave because of the women.
And now this Mahmoud Khalil's wife had to give birth alone without her partner, because her husband had been protesting, among other things, the fact that Palestinian mothers are holding their beheaded children in their arms in Palestine. So, I mean, yeah, like that whole argument about protecting Muslim women is such a fucking farce. And it's one of those examples where it's like, if you just start scratching the surface, barely, with critical media literacy, of scratching the surface of the bullshit US propaganda, you find that it's resting on absolute fluff. There's nothing there. It's all bullshit. And so I think it's really important to point this out. And also, going back to this story that Lee pulled up, if you look at the Know Your Rights trainings, always ask to see a signed warrant. If they don't have a signed warrant, don't open your damn door. Do not even talk to them. Just keep saying, I want to see a signed warrant, and that's it.
Yeah, and they may hold up a piece of paper, because that's another thing they do is they wave a piece of paper around, and you need to ask them to hold it up to the
taco recipe.
They need to slide it under the door, hold it up to the window. They often will pretend to have a piece of paper that is fucking nothing. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you got to look at it. And anyway, it's just so much trampling of the rights of Americans,
which we don't have.
We have a lot of, which we never really had. Got to get to a lot more, so I'm going to keep moving here. Medea Benjamin talking about the former Ministry of Defense staffer that is now in the Israel Ministry of Defense, that is now in the Trump administration. Trump appointed Marav Sirin to the National Security. Marav Shithead to the National Security Council as director for Israel and Iran. So she is directing our NSC to Israel and Iran. Who is she? Former staffer for Israel's Ministry of Defense. Yes, the one bombing Gaza. Works for Kojat, the Israeli agency currently blocking aid to starving Palestinians. Spent years at the Foundation for, quote-unquote, Defense of Democracies, a neocon war machine that's been gunning for Iran for decades. Wrote essays praising high-tech weapons, the same ones being used to level Gaza today. Now she's inside the White House shaping U.S. policy while Israel pressures the U.S. to strike Iran. This is Israel's war agenda inside the White House. I mean, here's the thing. It's not whoever he would have picked would have stood for these same things. It just, the difference is this kind of shows that Israel and the U.S. are one government. These are not separate entities. And, even Netanyahu was largely raised in America, went to school here. Yeah, was in Pennsylvania, went to MIT, worked at Boston Consulting. So Israel is just a U.S. empire entity. And it's the only country outside of the U.S. where they can just become members of the White House and we don't act like it's a foreign agent issue, or like even other allies. Like, I think even if like some dude who was in the Spanish defense ministry came and started, became a member of the Trump, I think people would be like, isn't that another country? But not with Israel. Nope. Perfectly fine to have them running parts of our government. I'm only going to show this for a second. It shows the absolute, just vapid moral, the lack of morality inside so many Israelis is so deep that it creates like a sucking noise. It's like a black hole of nothingness. It's not being amoral. It's just so empty that you just hear that noise coming out of their souls. This is a video on Israeli television, so they're not ashamed to be having this debate. This is a debate. Two of them are screaming at each other. I'll play a clip, even though it's in Hebrew. And they're screaming at each other about whether babies in Gaza are innocent or not, and whether they can be bombed.
הם רצחו אותנו, אנסו אותנו, שדדו אותנו, חטפו אותנו, רצחו
He's saying they came here, they murdered little children,
ילדים קטנים, נשים, אנסו. אתה לא יכול להגיד דבר כזה אחרי מה שהם...
He says, Gaza keeps yelling over, and the guy debating him also believes that Gaza should be nearly obliterated. He's just not so sure about killing so many of the babies. That's considered the moral left in Israel.
עזה הייתה צריכה לקבל מכה שלא כתובה בתורה.
אבל אתה אומר, אתה מבקר את זה.
Anyway, so the other guy says, like, yes, we should have responded to it, but is there no one innocent in Gaza? And the guy just keeps yelling at him, like, no. And this is the type of debates that are ongoing on Israeli media. Is just, we should be able to murder all babies. Like, publicly. Not even ashamed of it.
I don't have anything to say.
It's just, I think people need to know how utterly repulsive these human beings are.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I just, like I'm saying, I don't have anything to add.
Another story from Drop Site is that, and this is Yoav Gallant, this is the former defense minister, admitting that they manufactured they said there was a tunnel going under Gaza's Philadelphia corridor, and that was used, claiming they found that tunnel was used to actually end ceasefire talks earlier. And there's all these images of this so-called tunnel, and yet it actually was fake. It was created by the IDF.
Do you remember when they used like tunnel footage from Sweden to
oh yeah, that was early in the
yeah,
they were trying to say that Hamas had all these tunnels, and so they showed this footage of tunnels, and we're led to believe that these are Hamas tunnels, and someone found out that the footage actually came from Sweden.
Yeah, it's like Swedish underground,
like old old World War II Swedish tunnels or something.
Yeah.
But so this image here that's on the screen right now is of, you see the Humvee in the tunnel, and this image and some others were used to tell everyone, oh my God, this is a Hamas tunnel that goes under the Philadelphia corridor, which the IDF has shut down. Look at this Hamas tunnel. It turns out it was not a Hamas tunnel. It was a little tunnel that went underneath like a highway, and they just told everyone this was a Hamas tunnel. And this is Yoav Gallant, a mass murdering. There is a arrest warrant from the UN for war crimes. He's no longer the defense minister, and he's admitting that this was faked in order to end the ceasefire.
It is interesting
talks.
that Israeli media will admit these things. New York Times won't.
Some of them, yeah.
CNN won't. Like, you will legit see, and there's some good, like Alan McLeod does a good like side by side of these things where he'll post a headline from Haaretz or something like that, or even like the Israel Times, and they'll be like, so and so admits that this is that it was all bullshit, and then the New York Times is like, but what do we really know? And it's like, but they just said the thing. Like, did what you could just like literally copy and paste it from, like, you wouldn't even have to do any actual journalism, which is like what you don't do anyway. So like, just
literally, Haaretz has had many. I mean, Haaretz does other reprehensible stuff, but they've had many reports on how so much of the October 7th story is bullshit. Like, they've had reports on how the people claiming they saw these rapes is bullshit. That people who saw these dead babies, like, they keep doing these reports, and the U.S. isn't doing them. The U.S. media doesn't do that coverage.
Nope.
Okay, let's do this one.
So, people are probably not paying much attention to what's going on in Kashmir, because it's not as big of a story as Gaza. But Kashmir is the most militarized place on the planet. I've done several reports on Kashmir, including a report that I did a few months ago on Project Censored that was basically like an empty chair interview, because the journalist from Kashmir that I was going to have on told me that she actually couldn't be a part of the show because she fears for her family's safety back in Kashmir. So Kashmir has been under Indian control since the 40s. And basically what has happened now is there's been another escalation of violence. India, what you need to know is basically this: India and Israel are pretty tight. And as outlined in this piece by the Middle East Eye, the Indian government has called to implement an Israeli playbook in Kashmir, which is something that they've already been talking about since 2023. So, because Modi's government has been buying weapons from Israel and has been really enjoying watching how Israel works in Gaza. And now a bunch of people in his government and just, like Hindu extremists are calling for basically to Gaza Kashmir. And so the so Kashmir should be flattened like Gaza. Both don't deserve freedom. These kind of statements are being made. And here's the thing, that this has been a fear in Kashmir for a very long time, because the Indian government controls Kashmir entirely. Like they imposed a blackout, I believe it was 2019, where they basically like cut off all communications. So it's similar to Gaza in the sense that people are completely under the boot of India. So basically,
it's incredibly difficult to get in or out, right?
Right. It can be incredibly. They'll just like cut off the internet. They'll. So basically, there have been extreme. There's. I think I can't remember the name of the page, but if you want to learn more, there is a page that does a great job of it's called Stand with Kashmir on Instagram. And it basically gives you context for the military occupation of Kashmir under India and how horrific it is, and also like why it never gets any coverage, right? A lot of people don't even know. I mean, I didn't know until several years ago that this was an ongoing occupation. So I think that it's really horrific, and it also shows that you can't wait for people with genocidal intent to stop. They have to be stopped. And that's actually a line from an interview I did with Kerni Karkonian, who's an Armenian human rights lawyer, talking about what is being done to Armenia and Armenians. And so this is repeatable. It continues. And I wrote a piece about this on Substack about like the repeatability of genocides going back to Churchill. Because, he perpetuated them. He was an asshole. No one should ever uplift that dude. But so I think it's really important to recognize that Israel is not just a vacuum, right? What Israel is doing is not just showing the tactics, but also showing the impunity. If Israel can get away with it, why not India? If India can get away with it, you see what I like? So this like flaccid response, this flaccid global response to Israel is showing countries like India, hey, you can do it too. So yeah, let's Gaza, Kashmir, right?
Normalizing
It's
it.
normalizing it and saying that it's okay because guess what? The international community is not going to help them because much like in Gaza, the majority of people in Kashmir are Muslim. So yeah, nobody's going to come for them. We've proven that it doesn't matter.
And guess who normalized this before the genocide in Gaza began? Well, the U.S. was bombing indiscriminately in Iraq and Libya and Afghanistan. They showed people you can bomb wedding parties in Afghanistan from a drone, and there's no ramifications. It doesn't matter. So it really did. It's normalized it across the board for these murderous, bloodthirsty psychopaths.
Yeah.
Let's see a few more stories. Although, let's just pause for a second and say everyone should. Well, let's see. Each time I choose different things to promote because we try and be on about 30 different platforms, so that when some of them get suppressed or shut down, you guys still have ways to follow us. Today, let's say Substack. Eleanor has been posting some awesome Substack articles. I have also been posting some Substack articles, not as awesome, but no, I'm kidding. Mine are great.
I'm going to let you deal with your own self-deprecation and self-uplifting. I think you're doing a great job. You talk it out.
I was uplifting you.
I know.
But yes, we're both on Substack. I think you should follow both of us. Let's see if I can put. I'm now number 90 of Substack leaderboard for politics. And if you guys go over there, free. Uh-oh, we're getting glitchy again.
You know, I always called it letterboard.
Letterboard? You did not.
I did. I read it as like lead, like the metal, like lead letterboard.
I don't know if you want to admit that in public, but okay. And also, Eleanor is at eleanorgoldfield.substack.com. It's free to subscribe to both of those. But here's the other benefit is we are so suppressed on many of these platforms. YouTube's not going to alert you to our videos. We will often alert people through Substack that we are doing things. So Eleanor puts out a new interview on Project Censored, and many of those will be alerted on Substack. I post a new Unredacted tonight, and I'll put those up on Substack. So it is perhaps an even better way than YouTube to find out about our new videos, etc. if you're a Substack person. So thank you, Christian. Christian has been telling everyone that I'm going to be, do you know how to pronounce this? Manau?
Manau.
That I'm going to be in Manau in June 2026. Although this is not technically true, I thank Christian for proposing.
What does that mean? Technically true? Like it's untechnically true?
It's not true.
Oh.
I'm not sure why you didn't understand that. He's saying that he'd like for me to come to Brazil in 2026, I think.
Okay, that'd be cool. You should go. Although it seems like June would be really warm. But you do better than the heat than I do, so that's fine.
Anyway, yeah, am I correct? Manaus in Brazil, and thank you, Christian.
Well, that is a Brazilian. That was like really super small.
Little Brazilian flag. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for the support, and I would love to come there one day. I just no one's invited me other than Christian, but I don't know that.
Is that an official?
I don't know that he's got a flight ticket for me or something like that.
He works in Lula's office. It's an official invite, Lee.
All right. Which of these do you? Oh
God, that's terrifying, Lee. What is that?
It's supposed to be terrifying.
Okay.
All right. Now that you yelled that, we have to do the story. The WDAF has fired Klaus Schwab and brought in the former
acronyms. Don't use acronyms that people don't know.
World Economic Forum.
Thank you.
And brought in former Nestle CEO as the new head of the WEF.
What's going on with his face?
He's a cyborg. Why don't you appreciate cyborgs? You're being cyborgist. Peter Brabeck Letmath. Is that Letmath?
Brabeck. I would say it's Brabeck. Who gives a shit? Who gives a shit if you mispronounce these people's names?
Peter Shithead is the former CEO of, and Eleanor can't look at it.
I can't.
Former CEO of Nestle, who famously said in 2017, humans have no right to access free water. And that was his, I think that was his resume for becoming the new head of the World Economic Forum. Thank you, Jamil, for supporting the show.
And
Really appreciate it.
no one's commenting. Like, are we?
They picked that photo because of the eye. You do understand that.
But what happened, Lee?
What happened to his eye?
Yeah.
That's what happens when you become that evil. Your eyes turn blood red.
Do you know that my brother
And
convinced
Anthony
me?
Blinken lost his pupils.
That's true. You know, my brother convinced me when we were kids that the reason Skeletor was purple was if you lift too many weights and you get too buff,
What
you
about
turn
He-Man?
purple.
That makes no sense. What about He-Man?
It doesn't have to make sense. He's an older brother
So-
effing with his
But
younger
so,
sister.
So He-Man doesn't lift it
I
enough to become
guess-
purple?
I guess He-Man was slightly less strong.
Less strong than
Skeletor.
Skeletor? Oh, you just
Look, I didn't look.
screwed up the whole show.
I was
Thank
on
you,
the
Cupcake,
I was on the
for supporting the show.
receiving end of this propaganda. Okay, it's not, don't blame the victim.
Anyway, to quick, we're not going to
Can
spend
we get off of this image, please? It's going to give me nightmares. Please stop. Thank you. Jesus Christ.
quick summary of World Economic Forum. It is where billionaires, almost exclusively billionaires, but millionaires and multimillionaires get together to discuss things they'd like to do to the population of the world. Now, sometimes they will invite some people who are not psychopaths to speak, but in general, these are largely psycho and sociopaths who get together and discuss these things. Now, there are some people who give a little too much power to the World Economic Forum. They go, oh, such and such said at World Economic Forum A, B, or C, and therefore that's what's happening. I would not say that's always the truth. I think that the most dastardly shit that goes on is behind closed doors. They don't videotape it and present it to the world as here we are and here are our ideas. So I actually disagree that the WEF is the be all and end all of what we should say is happening in the world. I do believe these people are sociopaths, and I do believe that, you know, sometimes they will say things where you're like, that is horrifying. Like there was a clip, I don't think I played it, of one of them saying, you know, soon you'll have microchips in you and it will know everything about your, you know, medical history and everything, and it'll send it to the cloud. Like, so horrifying.
Mm-hmm.
And some of these people don't even know that this is like the quiet part they should be saving for the behind closed
well, but
doors.
because some people think it's cool. Like there are literally ads for, like, I can't remember what it was several years ago where there was an ad on YouTube before I started watching some video, and it showed like somebody laying on the ground, you know, like, oh God. And like the EMTs are rushing up to them and they take a scanner like you'd have at the store, like carrots. Like they take a scanner to this dude's arm and they scan him and they're like, oh, this is his blood type and he has diabetes. And they're like, this is the future. We can save more lives. And I'm watching this video like, this is fucking terrifying.
They want you to believe.
I think I'd rather just die on the pavement than have you scanning me like a bag of fucking carrots. Like, what is this?
They want you to believe that because one old person somewhere got knocked unconscious in a car crash, didn't know who they were, what their name was, or where they live, and they were able to scan their, you know, ass cheeks and find out that where they live and what their name is. That happened one time. Therefore, we should all have microchips implanted in our foreheads.
I'm all set.
It's classic. Like, oh, we found one noble use for this, so we'll tell everybody that because of that. It's kind of like when they first, do you remember there was a time 10, 15 years ago where it was like illegal to fly a drone, I mean, of any size, over the United States? And the first time they ever announced that drones were over the United States, they did it to like catch a pedophile or something. And people are like, wait, did you just say there's a drone flying over the United States? But because it was such a noble reason, now I don't hear anyone saying, hey, it's illegal to have drones over the United States. Nope, fine. Government can do whatever they want.
Yep. Same thing with the trolling through people's DNA to catch a killer. What was that, like the Golden State Killer or something? Oh yeah. Where they were basically like, oh well, thanks to DNA, and it's like, be better detectives, okay? You do not get to like look at my DNA.
Be better detectives.
Fuck no.
Yeah. Well, don't worry. They sold all that to BlackRock.
Yeah, seriously, dude. Just
whatever.
don't ever do 23andMe or whatever the hell else. Don't send your blood to people is what I'm saying. Okay, that's just always going to be creepy. So just don't do the thing unless you're like.
So I should not have that as a tier on Patreon. You get my blood.
Unless you're like, if you have, you know, like a vial of blood, you know, from your pet that died, that's cool. But just like, don't send it to anyone. All right.
Got it. Okay, folks, I am going to do an extra segment for those of you who are members at locals, leecamp.net. stay here. Eleanor has got to run, so there will be a 1 minute pause while I switch things over, literally like 1 minute. And if you want to become a member for the extra segment, go to leecamp.net. There, I'll let you do the elbow thing. Leecamp.net, which is the local page. Scroll down to become a member, and you can join us for the extra segment over on Locals. I hope you will do that. For the rest of you, I bid you farewell. And how do we have to record this for the podcast?
You fuck it up every time, so now it's just
goodbye. Just say something.
Bye. I said something.
But you could have said more if you'd like.
I could have, but you've already ruined it.
How did I ruin? I didn't ruin nothing.
I'm just going to scoot now.
No scooting. Stay here. Okay. See you in 1 minute. Those of you who are members. Oh, and we got a donation from Gary. Thank you, Gary, for supporting the show. Love you, buddy. Okay. See you in 1 minute.